Other ways, inconceivable.
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 You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
While The Princess Bride featured more famous quotes, Iñigo Montoya questioning Vizzini's use of inconceivable is not only memorable, but relatable in the business world when we hear terms used over and over in ways that may not be appropriate. While it's not the same as inconceivable, Neal Topf, president of Callzilla, has his own industry term that makes him feel like Iñigo Montoya every time he hears it in the wrong context. But our conversation isn't about semantics. It's about the realities of customer experience when applied in the real world. This week on Next in Queue, we discuss a tremendous weakness in the CX industry, a distinction between client and customer, why he prefers servant leaders over thought leaders, surprising places to find CX insights, the biggest challenges for companies to become profitable, the value of contrarians, and some advice to entry-level employees. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Next in Queue, the podcast for contact center and customer experience professionals. Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy 2 Vision. Eliminate blind spots and see right through every conversation with Happy 2 Vision. Learn more at happitu.com. Now, here's your host, Rob Dwyer.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining another episode of Next in Queue. Today, Neal Topf is joining me. Welcome, Neal. How are you?
Rob, it's a pleasure to be with you. I am great. It is a superb start to the week that I get to spend the time talking about CX together with you. Thank you.
I am excited for it. I am more excited, and we're just going to visit this. We talked about it just before we joined, but I am more excited that I have hurt your feelings by doing nothing at all other than my fandom. So
my feelings don't get hurt. I don't melt. I don't crumble like a Pringles potato chip. I'm all good. I respect your fandom and will make you respect mine. No, I'm just kidding. I hope my teams make you respect my fandom, but that's in their hands, not in mine. I get to just be a casual fan.
Yeah. So my Jayhawks got Hunter Dickinson in the portal, and your Maryland Terrapins did not. And yeah, we can just leave it there. Let's talk again in March, and we'll just see where things stand. It may be a fun time to revisit.
Just remember, I believe in 2002, I believe that the Terrapins beat Kansas in the semifinals before going on to beat the Indiana Hoosiers in the finals. I believe, if I remember correctly, you will know better, I believe we even beat the great Danny Manning. Just saying.
So here's the deal, and I'm just going to throw this out there for everyone. When you go to the tournament every year, you are bound to lose some games, and you will lose some games to people that they just think it's the greatest thing that ever happened to their program that they beat Kansas. That's a thing. And, you know, we've been going to the tournament typically as a high seed for the last 34 years. So the streak will live on. It's the longest streak in college basketball. And I am glad that anybody who has their "we beat Kansas" feel good moment, I'm glad that you have that.
I can see I'm not going to win this conversation.
Yeah, the arrogance is just seething out of me. That's how KU fans are. We are spoiled. We really are. We are very spoiled. And Hopefully one day our football team will spoil us too, but that certainly has not been the case for a very long time.
You guys are in Division 2 now, or is it 3 for pilot?
Deserved. Things are looking up. That's all I'm going to say. So, Neal, I did not bring you on to talk about sports, although it seems like often my guests and I get into a quick little sports thing before we get rolling. We are going to look at maybe a little bit different spin on some of the things that are out there with CX and the term customer centricity. And you have a little bit different take on this. And I just had Annette France on the show, and we talked all about being customer centric and what goes into that. Let's just get started with, do you think that that is at odds with how businesses actually are successful?
It's a great question. I love the fact that you asked it, because I think that within this CX community, too many of us who are talking heads, so-called thought leaders, pundits, etc., do not make the connection between the values we say we support about being customer focused, customer centric, the importance of customer experience, and the connection to business results. I think if there is a tremendous weakness in our industry as CX leaders, it's making the connection to the business and making sure that the business thrives, whether it's top-line revenue, whether it's management of cost, it's gross or net profit. I think there's too much of a disconnect as an industry between these two things. I do believe that both are important, both can be achieved, both can be victorious. The plight and championing of the customer, and of course, the championing of business and financial results. I think that if the business is not successful, the rest of it doesn't matter. It will go away. But I do believe a component of successful businesses, of course, is the way we manage and interact, acquire, and hopefully retain our customers. Does that hopefully begin to address kind of, I think, what you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that some people would say is we focus on the customer and we do everything for the customer to improve the customer experience. And that sounds really good. But aren't there trade-offs sometimes that have to be made for a business to make things successful? And do those trade-offs sometimes impact the customer experience in a negative way?
There are always trade-offs, of course. And I think we're both, I don't know if I'm jumping in too early around what Matt Watkinson wrote and whether we're going to allude to him specifically or not. Hopefully we will. Yes, businesses focus on multiple things. We are not centered on only one thing. And when I think that when Annette talks about being customer-centric, there are other things that she also talks about, the importance of being employee-centric. In my own organization, in Callzilla, we added a third one, which is being client-centric, meaning the companies that hire us to perform the services that we're asked to perform. Those are three different, unique, at times overlapping, at times vastly independent and autonomous ecosystems. I don't necessarily think it's literal that we have to put only one thing at the center. We do multitask. We can multitask in those organizations. We must multitask. And that's where Matt Watkinson's concepts, I think, they ring true. Business is about managing lots of different things at the same time. But I don't think that Annette is flawed in her suggestion that we must be centric of these, in her case, two things, customer-centric and employee-centric. You can have both things and manage them simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned Matt Watkinson. He's the author of Mastering Uncertainty. Um, is the problem then the word centric? Is that ultimately just we're talking about semantics?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of it's semantics. I think that what I take away from Annette's book, and by the way, my hands have been mostly above the camera. You can see them literally to the left here of my computer's eyes. I have the book, and Annette knows I've spoken with her and shared with her how important this book is for my organization. It served as a vehicle for how to rethink who we are and who we should be and how we remain competitive in our industry. I think that the point is that in the case of being customer centric, in the case of employee centric, in our case of clients, they need to have a seat at the table. And it's not literally a seat at the table that we're sitting at necessarily. It's have a participatory role or be included in discussions and decision making and analysis of how we execute upon our strategies. If we don't allow the customer, for example, to be represented in the decisions we make, the technology we decide to adopt, the processes and policies we create, it will likely result in us overlooking those stakeholders and not bringing them, not representing their interests. Too many of our organizations do that. We still make those mistakes, even though we say we're centric this and centric that. These are continual learning processes. I don't think there's ever a graduating point that says, we are now client-centric, we became client-centric, here's our graduating certificate and diploma, we did it. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing, I think, even struggle and challenge. But I think that it is not necessarily a literal thing. It's a bit of semantics, but the point is that they have a seat at the table and are considered an important part and stakeholder of what we do in the business.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. One of the things that you brought up that I think we should just clarify for the audience, because you're in the BPO space, you mentioned customer and you mentioned client. And for some people, they may not understand the difference between those two. Can you, go into exactly what you mean when you say customer and who that is and client and who that is?
I love this question because I think in our industry, we too easily exchange those terms, and they are vastly different things. The world of B2B, the world of B2C. I have a pet peeve with the term customer success. I think that, and I'll share that in a second. For me, a client is a company. It refers to, in the business to business world, a company contracting another company, or a company marketing itself to other companies, business to business. The companies that hire us are our clients. They have customers, we're assuming they're consumers. They typically have individuals and families that are consumers or customers. In other words, B2C, business to consumer. I hope I've made that clear. Business to business, business to consumer. We are a business that has clients, and our clients have customers that are individuals or families that consume products and services and buy those products or services. That hopefully makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that that is one of the things that is unique when you're talking from an outsourcing perspective, because while those customers are customers of our partner, our client, we also, those of us who have been in that BPO business, recognize that we look at those customers as our customers too, right? We're taking on the persona of our client, our partner. And when, if someone makes a phone call to inquire about a product or a service, as an outsourcer, you are that company, not the outsourcing company, but your client's company. And it's a really interesting dynamic. And so as an outsourcer, we are looking at really two groups of people that we are really trying to provide a great experience for, and those are the two groups, the customers and the clients.
But they're vastly different. How one acquires a client is vastly different than how one acquires a customer. Similarly, how one retains and serves and cares for a client is vastly different than how one cares for and serves a customer. Two vastly different practices. Yeah, there may be some overlap in some things, but the term success is what I alluded to earlier. Success for a client is vastly different than a success for a customer, and how those things are achieved. Totally different worlds. It gets under my skin to see the abuse, in my opinion, of the term customer success when I think it should really be called client success. But that's
So again,
my stuff.
Is that semantics, though? I mean, ultimately, is that what we're talking about?
So I've seen in too many places on LinkedIn, on podcasts, that are typically structured and supposed to be about CX, customer experience, people referring to and talking about business to business experience, business to business care, business to business acquisition, business to business retention. In my view, two totally different worlds that at times are even opposite. Yes, there's some overlap, but they're vastly different practices.
Yeah, I mean, I have had guests where we talk about the difference in a number of different ways between B2B CX and B2C CX, or even NPS, right? And how that is different in a B2B world versus a B2C world, and the methodology is different and the results are different. And I do think it's important that we always clarify what we mean when we're talking about something, particularly if it's mixed company, right? This show, we have people from all kinds of different practices. I just had on the show Christy Falterusso. She is in customer success, right? But it is a B2B situation where we're talking about customer success. And I think most people who are in customer success would say, yes, we're probably in a B2B situation, but for us, our customer is just that person, because we're not necessarily in an outsourcing situation where the distinction becomes important. I don't know if that's the case or not, but in my mind, I wonder if those of us that come up in the BPO world, that distinction is maybe more important than people that haven't been in that world.
I think it's a vastly different world. I think there is a distinction. While one may interact on a day-to-day basis with just one counterpart, the decision-making process of how the service or product is acquired, who renews it, who cancels it, who interacts with it in case it breaks, it's a vastly different world than just to see. The decision-making process is critically different. The way things are consumed, the way they're paid for, the way they're served. I think they're two totally different principles that have different tactics and different approaches and strategies.
Interesting. So I wonder then if you see that there is too much then of, right, the people that we see on LinkedIn or we see speaking at shows, are we sometimes missing the mark on communicating effectively because we're using terms and mixing and matching terminology that confuses people?
I think, unfortunately, that there are few to no barriers to entry in becoming a so-called thought leader. anyone can have a podcast today. Anyone can write a blog. Anyone can post something on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever else. And so it's a lot easier to become recognized or self-recognized as a thought leader. I think that also takes away from many of you who are true thought leaders and content creators that are putting out original, well thought out, well put together content. I like what Nate Brown said. Nate Brown had a great two-liner, and it's not a one-liner, it's a two-liner. It went something like this. It's not about thought leadership. It's about servant leadership. And my interpretation of that is that it's really easy to say post a bunch of crap. Many of the people that put out thoughts and ideas and put words into a sentence have never actually done or executed or been close to where that true work is actually done or not done. And so where the servant leadership comes in, I believe, is when you're actually doing what you say is so important. I don't want to hear about recommendations. I want to hear about success stories or failure stories of people actually trying to do things and executing, and people that actually know intimately what it's like to interact with a customer or an employee or a technology stack. I don't want to hear about the people that are 20 years removed from the contact center or the front lines that are just sitting back writing books. It's great to sit back and write books. It really is. But I think the responsibility when you're talking about the practice, you got to be in the practice as well, just a little bit, right? Yeah. There's too many people that are just so far removed from it now that they're reflecting back on what it was like 20 years ago. And that I think that the world changed so significantly. A lot of the more traditional voices, I think, are just not as close to the front lines anymore. And therefore, it's only thought leadership. It's not servant leadership. It's not someone who's actually rolled up their sleeves and done. And I think that those that have done have a lot more weight and authenticity and credibility, at least in my mind.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you bring up a couple of things that I want to dig into. One is I 100% agree with you, and it's not just the last 20 years. Things have changed so rapidly in the CX space, in the contact center space, in the way we interact with brands from in particular, a digital perspective, and the channels in which we experience brands, whether that's a buying channel, a service or support channel, or just how we hear other people talk about brands. When I think about, I got into the contact center business 13 years ago, give or take. It was nothing like it is today. Nothing. And the way we interacted with brands is nothing like it is today. Like, just in really the last decade, things have drastically changed. And if you're not in it, it's hard to pontificate on how you should do things to be really effective.
I think there's too much bloviation, would be a nice way of putting it. I'm tired of reading stuff. You should proactively communicate with all your customers. You should text message all your customers. You should send a handwritten thank you note to all your customers. I mean, are you kidding me? Those are great ideas if you have 3 customers. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, many of our organizations have, if you're in the B2C world, thousands, if not millions of customers. Those that are in the B2B world hopefully have dozens and dozens of, and maybe hundreds of customers. We got to talk different language now. Yeah. No more bloviation, more servant leadership.
Yeah, I think scale has always been a challenge with how we interact with customers. And technology has made things easier. But to your point, right, technology is not going to handwrite a note to anyone.
No, it's not. It's not. But look, I think it creates opportunities for all of us that are in this space to how to be authentic, how to be creative, how to do things differently, how to find multiple ways to skin the cat, so to speak, how to be good communicators with your customers, with your employees, how to get in front of them. And fortunately, there are so many tools that facilitate that how do you actually use them?
So the other thing that you brought up is, or I should ask about, is how do I go about, if I'm new and I'm looking for advice, how do I go about separating the wheat from the chaff when it comes to all of the people that are putting out all of this content? Because the content is rich. It's out there in all these different places, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube or TikTok. How do I know who to listen to and who maybe has no idea what they're talking about because they haven't done anything for a couple of decades, to your point?
You know, that's the interesting thing, is that what is great content for me doesn't necessarily mean that it's great content for you. I would always suggest reach out to the people that are recognized on the top, whatever, 30, 115 of the, CX leaders. Look at them, see what they've written, read a little bit of it. And one can quickly make a determination. This makes sense. There's something here, or there's something that's just pure BS. My guess, this is just my educated guess, is that of those rankings that come out every month, half of the people that are recognized produce really great content. The other half, maybe not so much. That's outdated, that's generic, that's not substantiated, that's not quantifiable, and just very, very overgeneralized. I think people just need to spend the time to read, investigate, and make determinations for themselves. I will say this, as an American, we have or at least I have the, maybe call it patriotic thought that we as Americans are leaders in everything. And in CX, I think we have been leaders. However, there are some incredible thought leaders from all parts of the globe, in places that one would not think even existed or have customer care industries that are worthy of standing up to the developed economies. I've discovered that not only in Western Europe, but in Eastern Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, and to an emerging extent, Latin America, there are some thought leaders and practitioners and writers that are really, really putting out some great thought and great ideas and sharing their work. I would say look beyond the initial kind of knee-jerk reaction that people like I may have of, American only. Yeah, there's some great thought leaders in the US, of course. Look beyond and go outside the borders as well.
Yeah, I cannot echo that enough. I've had multiple people on this show that are not from the US, and the entire thought process behind starting Next in Queue started with a podcast that I was listening to by Martin Teasdale, Get Out of Rap, which is out of the UK. And I loved and still love what Martin is doing. It's different than what I'm doing with this show, but he now has basically a team lead community going where all of these team leaders can, from different companies, right, whether they're insourced or outsourced, they can come into this community and share and ask questions and get advice from peers and from people who have been there in the trenches and done this. And I think that's the exact type of servant leadership that you're talking about, is doing something that actually helps people who are doing the work. And those types of voices can really inspire some people and make, create some actual movement, provide actual value.
It's so tempting. I want to throw out some names, but I don't want to do it because inevitably I'm going to forget others that would deserve to be mentioned. So I'm not going to mention them now, but just in the UK alone, there are some incredible thought leaders in the CX space. And like I said, the further east you move, where you might not think that CX is as well developed, you'd be wrong. You'd be wrong. You'd commit a mistake. Like I had thought that, what do they know over there? The opposite. They know a heck of a lot, and oftentimes more than we do. And so it's kudos to them and the way that they're getting their voices out there and publishing content and writing books and participating in events and finding ways to make their content available regardless of where the reader or listener is.
Yeah. So let's come back to the business aspect, the thing that we were talking about. We talked about the business needs to make money, right? That is ultimately the goal of business, is to, at the bare minimum, break even, but ultimately businesses are trying to make a profit. And there are some things that need to be considered along the way that some people may say, well, that's maybe not customer centric. But I wonder, are the struggles that businesses have in becoming profitable, do they boil down to they're not following the right processes, they're not being customer centric or client centric? What do you think the biggest challenge is for a company to really kind of move that to that next step to make money?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it's a mix of art and science, or as Rishad Tovakwala says, it's a mix of plumbing and poetry. The plumbing is the use of the Excel, the formula, the math, the process, combined together with the people that are in charge of taking all of the inputs and creating the art and making it a beautiful, creative package. It's both. There's certainly, everyone is talking, of course, about ChatGPT and automation and artificial intelligence. Those things are going to eat us for lunch. But the humans that are in charge of designing how and where and what and how much we use those, it all depends on us as well. It's a beautiful creative tension between both things. The importance, I think, is still the human being. I would not, by the way, up until the pandemic, I would have said the opposite. I would have said it didn't matter. The employees didn't matter as much because there were always going to be employees. Well, we learned during and after the pandemic that is not true. There aren't always employees. It's really hard to find the good ones. It's even harder to retain them. And therefore, such an importance of having the right people in the right places. But when you're busy in the contact center, for example, turnover, training, hiring, training, and you're just on that hamster wheel, how can you focus on being profitable when you can't even get out of your own way and hire some people and keep them? I think many of our businesses have those types of challenges. I've oversimplified it with just the hamster wheel of the contact center agent. But we all are faced with challenges like that: hiring the right people, having the right processes, integrating and utilizing technology in the right way, doing so in a way that's sustainable so you're not overspending on stuff and all of a sudden, 9 months down the road, you're left with a hunk of junk of stuff you invested in and don't know how to use or didn't put into use properly. It's too easy to mess those things up, and that's where the right people are so critical to have. Not easy because fewer and fewer people are coming to work, and fewer people are making lifelong careers out of staying in one place. And many people seem to want to have an entrepreneurial or this gig economy approach of doing a little here and a little there, and not necessarily being committed to one thing. We've got these creative tensions in the world, so it gets hard. I don't have the answer. If I had the answer, I would have won the Nobel Prize already, or the Pulitzer Prize, or some prize. I'm going to be a top CX thought leader, or one of these global guru things that people get nominated for. But I think you and I are both laughing at that one. But I don't have the answer, but it is what my day to day is like. It's It's hiring the right people, hopefully keeping them motivated on their toes, challenging them to play a role in solving our problems and our clients' problems. I tell my people, our job is not to solve and create a cure for cancer, but it's to solve how to create better customer and client experiences. It's how to reduce friction in the customer experience. It's how to take some costs out of it. It's how to answer an interaction more quickly, how to get to resolution more quickly, and hopefully create more resolutions. And if you get those, hopefully you get to satisfaction. Is that curing cancer? No, but it is important and has challenges that for us feel in the moment equally, if not more challenging than the rest of the things that all the innovators are trying to challenge, trying to come up with solutions for.
I'm gonna nominate you and Alex Mead for some CX list. Maybe I'll just make my own.
Listen, we all need an Alex Mead to challenge us. Yeah. I don't know Alex Mead other than what I've read of his. Alex Mead definitely has a purpose in the CX community. It's to challenge people and to make people think. I think Alex Mead, what I would say to Alex Mead is keep being you. You may rub some people the wrong way, and you definitely do, but you're hopefully making some people think at least, and you're making people, you're creating a little bit of discomfort out there in a healthy way that I think challenges us all. We all need an Alex Mead in this world to keep us honest and to keep us on our toes.
100% agree. That discomfort, that anytime we enter an area that is uncomfortable, that's where the growth really comes from. The comfortable place is a place where, you're just on the couch and it's comfy and you've got some comfort food, and that's the wrong kind of growth. That's just girth, buddy.
That's girth. Well said. That's girth. That's BS.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they have a plan, says Mike Tyson, until you get punched in your nose.
Yeah.
And punch in the nose, sometimes we all need a little punch in the nose or punch in the gut, or a little wake up, because that's when you get your lunch handed to you, or they eat you for lunch out there, whatever the expression is. It's we all need it.
I wonder if you had to give some advice to someone who is today maybe entry level, or they want to get into a customer experience type of role, or they want to get into a contact center type of role. What would you tell them to just keep in mind up here as they progress?
I love this question, especially in the CX and contact center and customer care space. There is so much attrition and so much bad performance that those that do perform well, those that show potential, those that ask questions, those that show interest will only do this. They will only go up. There are tremendous career opportunities in these spaces we just talked about for the right people that show interest, show curiosity, are willing to be a little bit patient and to stick it out and to be there, and they will rise. This is a great opportunity for career advancement. You just have to show the interest and stand out a bit. Ask questions. It's okay not to know the answer, but ask questions, be curious. Things that I think have helped hopefully contribute to a little bit of success I've had is I ask a lot of questions, and I challenge myself and my team or even our clients. Why are we doing this again? How can we do this better? Shouldn't we consider this? What if we did it that way? And all of a sudden you've shaken the tree just a little bit. You've created just enough discomfort that you start to see and have some insights appear in front of you. And we all learn and benefit from those insights. And that's what helps us get to grow.
I love something that you just said there with asking questions. I think a lot of people get scared to ask questions because asking a question is an implicit way of saying, I don't understand everything that we're talking about. And for a lot of people, that's an admission that they feel like this will make me look stupid if I ask this question. The reality is the people that really get to the heart of the matter and uncover the things that we can do to make anything better, any process, any way of going about things, any experience. The people that ask questions are the people that really facilitate that happening.
People that ask questions, hopefully in the correct organization, are noticed. When a supervisor, leader, boss has an employee or team member that is asking questions, in my view, it shows curiosity, it shows interest, it shows someone has some brain activity, it shows care, sense of belonging, because they want to know. And if you want to know, probably it means that you want to have a better outcome. You care about the organization. You care about improvement. And those are great signs to show an employer, boss, or leader. It shows that you care. It shows that you want to be part of the team. That's how I interpret it. And I wish I had more and more of those. Those are the types of personalities that I like. People that are curious, people that are going to care. They're going to go the extra mile. They're going to want to propose solutions. And you know what? Sometimes the solutions may not always be 100% correct or accurate, but that's okay. At least you try.
Yeah. Yeah. You did say something important, a qualifier there, in the right organization. Asking too many questions in the wrong organization can be problematic for you. So I would say, your mileage may vary. Be curious, but understand what kind of culture that you're in. And if it's a culture that doesn't like asking questions, be on the lookout. It might be time for you to find a different landing spot.
True that, as they say.
Absolutely. Neal, this has been a fantastic conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you today, and we've uncovered, I think, more questions than answers, and I'm excited about that because finding the answer is, that's exciting in and of itself, but sometimes the questions are more intriguing than the answers are.
They are. It's always fun to exchange dialogue with like-minded people that are curious, that are interested in putting out good content for our community. Those that consume your content, I think, learn, they benefit, they utilize it in their job, in their career, and you're doing a service for the community. And I'm thanking you for allowing me to be a part of it today, to have the dialogue. And one thing is for certain, in March, we'll talk about what happens between the Jayhawks and the Terps.
We will. And, I set myself up for these conversations because that's the way fandom goes. And this year wasn't our year. It was a good year. It wasn't our year. But I think 2024 is going to be exciting.
From your lips, as they say. I wish you luck. And as the pieces of treasure that you have behind you that you, I assume, built with your own hands, as they say, may the force be with you. I wish you success. I also wish the Maryland Terrapins in the top basketball conference and top football conference, second top football conference in the country, the Big Ten, continued success.
Yes, I appreciate your wishes. Thanks, Neal.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy To and is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. If you enjoy this podcast, please by all means subscribe and or rate this podcast in iTunes or your favorite podcast app. But more importantly, please tell just one person about this podcast. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. As always, thanks for listening.